welcome back to Film Live at NAB. Earlier in the week we produced a film on the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera as well as their new 4K production camera. You've had a load of questions, so we've come back to speak to Stuart from Blackmagic to get some of them answered. Hi Stuart.
Hello.
So we've had a whole host of questions, and I'll just fire them at you if that's okay.
Sure.
So the Blackmagic Pocket camera, what's the crop on the lens of that?
So it's an active micro 4/3 mount, which basically means that you're going to get a crop factor of about 1.3, 1.4. So if you want to shoot those nice wide shots, you shouldn't have any problem with that really. It should be quite native as such.
So we're talking a big improvement over the previous Blackmagic Cinema camera in terms of the crop.
I think that with this camera, it's obviously the form factor is much smaller, which means that you want in many cases to actually shoot as wide as possible in most cases. So I think that what we tried to do with the Super 16mm sensor is really kind of address some of those issues with regards to crop factor.
And who do you think will be using this camera?
Well, I think the nice thing with the camera is that it kind of opens up a whole load of different areas for many different people. I think in my case, I mean, I'm an enthusiast, so I would go out and I would want to go and shoot things and make them look cinematic and make them look beautiful. So I don't think that limits everyday people like you and I. But then again, when you sort of see that the idea of the form factor could be great for things like on stage stuff, it could be for more covert filming, it could be for things like if you want to basically rig this in a crash cam or underwater housing. So the form factor kind of really gives it the flexibility, and then with all of that dynamic range and all the capability of the camera, you're still able to get those beautiful cinematic images.
Sure. So one of the things that's come up is about the cinema DNG recording and recording onto SD cards. Now you guys have got a pretty innovative solution around how you can record what on the previous camera was huge data rates now onto SD cards. Can you just talk us a bit through that?
Absolutely. So we tried to address the format, because obviously you can't get an SSD into one of these, so it means that you're having to compromise with regards to the type of media that you're using. So it's a standard class 10 SD card, but then what that also means is that we can record a ProRes 1080p file on there, which is a 422 HQ, or we can also do a visually lossless cinema DNG file. Now that's a raw file, but what that actually means is that there is a wrapper on it, so when we actually record that down to the SD card, you're going to get around about 30 minutes on a 128 gig. The ProRes is more than double that, so you're around about 70 or 80 minutes 70 or 80 minutes for ProRes. And this one doesn't come with DaVinci Resolve, but one of the key things, obviously, with it being a HD version of the camera, it means that you can go online, you can download DaVinci Lite, and that's a full HD workflow, HD software for free of charge. So this is a perfect companion for DaVinci Lite.
Fantastic. I hadn't even considered that, so that's great. I suppose one of the great things about the Blackmagic Pocket camera with the micro 4/3 lens mount is you can go to various different adapters. Can you just explain for our viewers what we can adapt to?
Yeah, well, this is an active micro 4/3 mount. So what that actually means is that you can use the Panasonic and the Olympus lenses, but also as well as it connects perfectly to PL. So on the booth actually here at NAB we go a bit overkill and we're using an 18 to 80 ARRI lens. I'm not saying that everybody out there is going to be doing that, but what this actually means is that you can make essentially a small camera actually quite big, whereas when you actually talk about form factor of a bigger camera, it's very difficult to make that much smaller.
Sure, no, that's a great point. And what's the battery life like on these?
You'll get about an hour on the battery, but again, it's a standard Nikon battery in there, so everyone's familiar with Nikon and everyone's familiar with their battery type. So obviously, it's relatively inexpensive if you want to buy spares, but on full running time, you're around about an hour.
That's fantastic. When are we expecting to see this in stores, or when can we get hold of one?
Well, we're starting to take pre-orders now through resellers up and down the countries, which we sell through. I mean, all the information can be found on where to buy on our website, which is blackmagicdesign.com. If you place an order today, we're hoping that we're going to start shipping this in some volume in July, which we feel that we don't know at this stage what the back order situation is going to be like and how many people are going to order, but we're very confident in high delivery in July.
So one of the things that happened with the last cinema camera was there's a lot of delays with actually shipping. Are we likely to see this again in the future?
We don't expect so. I mean, that was a kind of a one-off in many ways, in that the problem with the sensor which we had was a contamination issue, and that was something which was very much out of our control. And what we needed to do was we had to make a decision of, well, do we send something out that we don't believe is the quality that we want, or do we actually hold back and wait for this to be rectified? And we believe we made the right decision. It meant that people's orders got pushed back 4 or 5 months, but we're now catching up quite quickly. We've shipped thousands of the 2.5K camera, and we'll be on top of that very soon. And I think that with this camera, it's a very different sensor than the other one, as is the 4K camera, so I don't think there'll be any problems at all.
If we're already on the Blackmagic, the 2.5K camera waiting list, is there anything that we can do to upgrade to the 4K now?
Well, I think that the first thing I would say is don't rush to make that decision. I think that the worst thing that we can do at this stage is all go, right, we're cancelling our order today and we're now going to start looking at the 4K. What you need to do is you need to sit down and really think about the purpose of what you need that camera for. Because if you're working in a HD environment and you're looking at potentially the 2K environment thereafter, then obviously there's no necessary need to jump up to 4K. Obviously there's some compromises you make with 4K, the main one being obviously the size of the files and how you're going to maneuver those around. But we have got solutions in Blackmagic to help with that. But I guess the first thing I would say is think about the application, think about where you're going to deliver. If it's HD and you want small form factor, then go with this one. If it's something that you want with more codecs and you want, maybe EF lens mounts, then look for the middle range. And then obviously if you're considering 4K, then obviously we've now got a 4K camera as well.
So that's a bit more information on the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera. Another question that we were asked quite a bit was about rolling shutter. Now we've just been to check it out. So the rolling shutter on this camera is minimal. Even looking on a 42-inch screen, it's barely noticeable at all. Now this camera ships in July and we can't wait to get our hands on it.